No, we're excited to be here this morning. My wife and our three children, so our oldest apparently went to children's church, but the younger two are still here. So my wife Courtney, and we have an 8-year-old Trey, a 7-year-old Elikana, and a 4-year-old Isaiah. So they've joined us this morning, but we're just down the road, as you would, down 84. I pastor at Cloverdale Church of God with Pastor Tom Doherty. He's just closing out year 30, and a little bit of heritage here, that they were here when they built the original part of the gym. And I'd heard that story, and I got a chance to confirm that today as well. Tom's brother Dan is here this morning as well, so thankful to have him. But just to hear even his passion, having grown up in this community, and just to talk about his father and the impact of Oregon Trail is, I don't know. I'm not as emotional as the Dohertys, but it does get to me as well. Pastor Tom says, I'm a little bit emotional, but we're excited to be here. And so we're connected by extension of our family, which is the Church of God, but also God's prompting. So providential of Pastor Brian was obviously serving at Cloverdale, and so when he felt the call for him, Marine, to come and to accept the senior pastorate role here, that God started moving other dominoes. And I was in Vancouver, Washington at the time, and God orchestrated me going and taking over for Brian. So I'm kind of like Brian 2.0 or something over there. But so we have a lot of connectivity in a lot of ways, but we're thankful that God has continued to orchestrate that and be in the midst of it. Perspective sometimes is we get to see a little bit, but he's doing a much larger piece of the puzzle. So like I said, my name is TJ, and that gives a little bit where I'm from. Now, I met some of you and got to shake your hands, but my full name is Talalotu Elikana Samuelu Jr. Now, that's not my qualification this morning to speak on global, although it does play a role in that. My father is from the islands of Samoa, and so he came over to go to college here in the States. And that was because missionaries came over to my grandfather's church, and they said, hey, you should send your son. We'll get him educated, train him up, and then he can come back and help take over your church, which was a really, really, really good plan until he met my mom. And thankfully for me, he did, and he ended up not going back to Samoa. But that kind of started out ministry, and that's as easy as I can put it of when I look at what role does missions play. Well, if people weren't willing to step out in the Great Commission to go and love on people, now, trust me, there's a lot worse places that you could go than the South Pacific Islands, but nonetheless, to step out in that faith, if they hadn't done that, my father would have never been here, ergo, nor would I. And so people's faith and stepping out in that is very tangible. It's easy for me to connect the dots and just say, man, the Great Commission takes place and it makes things possible. So a little bit about that and me. My background is I moved out, like I said, from Vancouver. I was the missions pastor there. And as Pastor Brian could attest to, now at Cloverdale, I have a lot of hats. And so there's a lot of things that I wear, but missions is still one of those passions for me and one of the things that I get a chance to talk about. And so I want to share a little bit about those. But before we do that, there's a lot of verses that we could dive into about these things, but I was going to leave it just at the Great Commission. So in a second, I'm going to read Matthew 28, 16 through 20. So if you want to cue that up in your Bibles, Matthew 28, 16 through 20. But I think that it's made pretty plain in that of what God does. And there's a lot of different ways that we can look at that, a lot of different ways that we could share about what he's doing. But I'm going to just focus on this piece for this morning. So the Great Commission says this in Matthew 28, 16 through 20. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of some. No, again, all. Yes, all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have asked you? No. Commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. So I try to play a little trick on you with some of those things. He lays that out pretty clear. He says, go to all nations, right? And then he says, all the authority that he has been given in heaven and on earth. So he lists his credentials, our goal, and then he doesn't ask us, but he gives us a command. And I told you I got 3 kids. There's sometimes you're asking, and then there's sometimes where it's like, no, this is what we're doing. So we got to get on board, right? Like, we're moving forward in this general direction, and this is what we commanded. This is what we're about. This is our genetic makeup of our fiber of our being, and we're moving forward in that. This isn't like, well, this is a parameter that you should probably hold or, write it on a Post-it, put it up on the refrigerator, eventually it falls off, one of those things. It's a command, right? So knowing that and understanding that and where that goes. So it's pretty straightforward. Going to all nations. That means doing it here locally as well, but my task is global stewardship. How are we doing that? Now, I like to describe this sometimes as the 3 T's. So you have time, you have talent, you have treasure, right? And so a lot of churches are good with the treasure part, that they can help write a check and they can help support missions and missionaries and things that they do. And that's the way that they get involved. The tougher ones are the other 2 T's, giving of your time, because sometimes you don't have that expendable time. Time is probably your most precious commodity that you have, so where you invest that and spend that is important. And so giving of your time, and then your talent. You saw a talent happen this morning with Kim and the worship team. They were using the gifts that God has given them to help usher a time of worship. And so using those gifts and their talents for the kingdom and the kingdom mindset. So I have a little display here of some things I'm going to go around. I have this morning, hopefully, someone's hungry. They didn't get a chance to eat breakfast. I have a nutritious breakfast for you. Does anyone want a Oreo this morning? Don't be shy. Don't make me go to my kids, because I really don't want to get them that worked up this morning. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Sadell. Anyone else? Anyone? Yeah, why not? We're having a little fun this morning. Pastor Brian's going to be like, why did I let these guys speak? He's passing food around. We're having a good time this morning. We'll have 2 more. Here you go, both for you guys. Take a second one. All right. Last shall be first. She gets 2. But the imagery that I just showed you was a plate, right? Looks pretty simple. But as we talk today, I want you to realize that this plate, when it was made, its intent and purpose was to be able to put food, to be able to serve. And it just was functioning in the way that it was created. Just like in a command, a plate is meant to serve and to be there as a vessel to be able to get the blessing to another person, so to speak. Maybe not in an Oreo form, but better than that. We're talking eternity here. But it's able to push that forward. When used properly, it's a wonderful tool, a wonderful vessel. Now, when not used properly, if you put it in here, you can put it in and you can kind of put a plate out and, whoa. Yep, that's also going to be fun. But if we're broken, right? If we're not doing what we're intended, what God created us for, we become shards. And as a church, those shards can hurt. We can cut at one another. We can make nasty sounds when we're not doing what we're intended to do, and we're broken. We just can't do and serve not only ourselves, but fulfilling that great commission that God has placed in our hearts and commanded us to do. Now, we're going to leave my construction to that this morning, but through that, not something that we can earn, but through the redemptive grace of what Christ did, we can be made whole in what God intended us to be, and we can be a vessel and a plate that we can use to connect God's people with what he's trying to give them. So you play a huge role. You may think, I'm just a plate. What can I do? But that plate connected Oreos this morning as an analogy to keep and to pass something forward. So we all play a role in this. So knowing your time and your talent and your treasure. Now, many of you might not know, because as I've met with a lot of people through the Church of God, they don't know exactly the impact that they have on a global scale. Sometimes we think, yeah, I know we have missions, we get involved. I think, that we do some things and that we're a part of it. Well, because we end up being a community church, a lot of blended people that come from a lot of various backgrounds and denominations and stuff, I want to share some statistics with you this morning. So, statistically speaking, I'm going to talk in bigger numbers. In what's defined as North America, both the United States and Canada, we currently have about 251,000 members for the Church of God. Now, contrasting that to what we have on the international or global scale outside of that is 1.17 million. So if you break that down in percentages, it works out roughly to about 17.7% of our movement is in North America, and 82.3% of people that worship and call the Church of God home are on an international or global scale. And that's one of the things that I've really loved in that, and I'm one of those transplants myself, is I grew up not in a Church of God church, but that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed and loved about who they are and what they embody. That they see the least of these and they go out and they take that commission seriously in reaching those people. And they have a huge perspective on the least of these. And they step into that gap. I threw a couple statistics as well. Half of the world lives on less than $2.50 a day. Now, I told you I just lived down the highway a little bit, but I spent more than a gallon of gas getting here this morning, and I spent more than that just driving here, and I'm going to spend equally as much to drive back to Boise today. That number goes up to 80%. Humanity lives on less than $10 a day. And so perspective, again, as what a dollar does here or stretches for us, it's multiplied when you're talking about things in a global context. $5 here or something like that makes a huge difference. So don't ever feel that, man, I gave sacrificially and I was only able to give $10. Or maybe you sponsor a child through Children of Promise and $32 or whatever that is for the country that you're assigned. That money makes a world of difference to them. And so I want you to know that and help illuminate that for you. Now, I got a chance to go and connect this past November with the Armstrongs. So Don and Carolyn, you guys support them out of this church as well. And they are wonderful people that I got a chance to meet from there. And we got a chance to go from Thailand to where they live. I got to go to Bangladesh. I also got to go to India. I spent about 3 weeks just traveling, getting to see God at work in and through them. And it was a great experience, one that obviously helped me recalibrate who I am in my perspective. It changed me and gave me a heart, again, to reach and to love these people. See, I love the opportunity to step out in trips because I get to recalibrate, like I said. Now, one thing that I use to gain perspective is if it's right here and it's all that I can focus on, and we all have things like this in our life, but it's right there. It's just the only thing that I can see it's focusing on. It's maybe like 90% of what I can see. But if I can gain perspective, it wasn't some magic trick. It wasn't, honey, I shrunk my thumb. It's not some weird thing. It's the same problem. But by gaining perspective, it's maybe now only 10% of what I can see. So gaining perspective in those moments really helps to learn and see how blessed we truly are. Like I was saying, on this trip, I got a chance to meet this little girl. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about her, and then we're going to watch a clip as well. But I'm going to tell you a little more than I told the first service before we watch it. Here's what stood out to me about Sarah Boney. There's this 6-year-old girl that you're going to get a chance to see. And I have no other words than to say that this portion of the trip was emotional. Some high, some low. This little girl's story, you'll see her and she's smiling and she has the joy of God in her heart. And you can just see that and you can feel that. And it's such a wonderful experience. But going back just a little bit before I was able to meet this young lady, her parents live on a tea plantation, which I have no other way than to describe as like modern day slavery. That they live in homes that are on the plantation, which is owned by the owner. If they don't work, they have to leave their home because they'll kick them out. Now, if they get to a point of retirement age and they want to stay, then they have to find another family member or someone to take their place, therefore that they can keep their labor force up and working. So it's this horrible cycle, and this is what they're facing. Well, the plantations have taken a hit. Sometimes it's been really difficult for them to make money, and this happened to be the case just before I met this young lady. And out of desperation, her father took her 3-month-old brother and sold him for 6,000 Indian rupee, which when I was in country and interest and all those things, they vary, right? But it came out to just under $100 US. This 3-month-old boy was sold and quickly vanished into thin air. The church tried to reach out and find him, to see where he'd gone, to try to get him back, and that wasn't the case. And even worse than that was Sarah Boney was now left with a mother who felt that to get even with the father, she would try to kill her daughter. She did things like try to throw her out in the busy streets of India so that she could get run over, to get even with the loss of their son. Now, one of our pastors was made aware of this, and obviously this didn't sit well with her, and she was just beside herself. So she actually went to this mother and said, "Is there a price? Can I spend $6,000 to buy your daughter back? Can I have her?" And the mother was so distraught that she said, "You can just have her. You can have this little girl." Now, they were able to take her and move her to another pastor in another part of the country. And they had only had 2 boys. So they longed for a daughter. And God reunited them and made them a complete family. So the video that you're about to see is this little girl who has that part already at 6 years old of her testimony. And what we were able to do is go and meet her, and I got a chance, and you'll see in the video, to pray for her. I also give her a pair of shoes, which is another ministry or outreach that we have locally. I don't know if you know, but just down in Nampa, we have a thing called The Shoe That Grows. And it's a ministry that the shoe can grow actually 5 sizes. It has adjustments in the straps and leather that allows the shoe to grow 5 sizes so that kids can continue to wear these. Now, why is that important? Well, most of them haven't wore shoes at all. So when I gave one girl one, she walked on them like we would with flippers, right? She starts walking on her heels like she's about to go scuba diving because they felt so weird to her. But they have a ministry here locally that we partnered with. Now, our goal for VBS was to raise enough to buy 100 pairs of those shoes and send them to Pakistan. We were able to, just like I'm sure your church, to be more gracious. And we were able to send 100 to Pakistan, but I was able to take 40 with me on this trip as well and hand these out. And so you get a chance to see that. And it's a local ministry that we partnered with for global. See, global ministry says connecting local passion with strategic global partnerships. I'll say that again, connecting local passion with strategic global partnerships. It's been my experience that oftentimes when you go on a short-term mission, you see the need, but the cause usually takes, and the cure takes place usually at home. You come home and you're changed. And so you're seeing a lot of those ministries take place here. So I want to go ahead and roll the video, and you guys will get a chance to see this little girl, Sarah Boney, and what she looks like. As you will see, it's a pastor and his wife and this young woman that's now 6 years old. Just see the redemptive grace of what God is doing in her smile, her countenance. Here's a precious Lamb of God that you get a chance to see in this video. And man, I don't know how you've arrived here this morning or what your story is like, but man, God is in the redemption business, right? And aren't we all grateful for that? So that's just one of the many stories that I had of seeing this little girl and how much she was impacted. And you saw Don Armstrong in that. Hopefully you recognized who he is. He's the regional coordinator that I was talking about. They oversee Southeast Asia and the Pacific. So they have over 20 countries that they help have insight to and speak and work with local leaders to place. And we did things while we were there, like microloans. So they give anywhere up to $500. And these people were able to take that money. Think of, like, more biblically speaking, like Paul going into tent maker mode. So bivocational, a lot of these pastors can't be afforded by a congregation, or they don't have the training to step out and be a leader of a congregation. So they did various things from, like, one got another video camera, and he was videotaping and being a videographer for a lot of things. Another person opened up a store in their village to where they were able to continue to help and make a different way. Another person opened a restaurant with some of that small seed money and were able to do these things. And so they're able to help empower indigenous people to make them self-sustaining in their area so that God can continue to meet their need. And as we move forward, then we can go and move and help with the next project, but that they are self-sufficient. So I looked at that. I looked at the shelter in Cuttack, India. The shelter has been there for over 100 years, and its purpose was to pull young women out of sex trafficking, to give them an education. There's an English medium school there where they learn English, and that they can continue to be provided for and cared after. And so that's one of the things that takes place there. And this morning, when I was coming in, I got a chance to meet a couple of the little girls. So I was coming up the front door. I got here a little early before first service, and they were quick to swing open that front door, hand me a bulletin, smile at me, and they had some great hospitality to welcome me, right? They extended that. They didn't just sit there and say, well, I hope this guy with the ponytail makes it in here pretty soon because it's cold out there. You know, they extended themselves, stepped out a bit in faith, and opened that to come and meet me. So we have an opportunity to do that. Now I want to show you the next slide of a video here, and it is the welcome that we get, and it's humbling in the villages that they will drop everything to receive you. And so I kind of took some footage of that as well, and so we'll get a chance to play that this morning and to see that.
wait for them. David, you go fast. John.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yep, got it.
So that's kind of a bit of how they receive you and the impact and the hospitality and stuff that they have. And those are just some of the humbling moments that I got to see. See, they welcome you and they make you feel at home, just like you guys did today when I came to try to continue to reach out and meet people at their point of need. I had a story that I remembered of Francis Chan, and he was sharing about how in California, the church that he helped pastor, they had this moment where a gang member had given his life to Christ, came and got baptized at the church, and not long after that, he started to have, he started to detach from it. And so he had a guy reach back out to him and say, "Hey, what happened? Where are you at, man? We've been missing you." And he said, "You know, I thought when I got baptized, I was a part of a family and they would be there for me 24/7. That they would always have my back, not just on Sundays and Wednesdays, but that they were going to live out life like you were talking about in Acts in the early church. Like when I got jumped into the gang, those guys had my back 24/7 from day one from that, and I felt that. And I remember Francis saying, that just broke his heart. I mean, that's his church. And how could the gangs help be a better version of a family than his church was being? And so I think that being able to receive and to love on people, that is a huge part of who we are, and that you can do that wherever you're at, locally or globally. Now, I get a chance to be a part of Global Strategy Roundtable as the missions pastor. So there's about 12 or 15 of us that meet twice a year to talk about projects and our ability to help and make an impact in those areas. So I am on that team, and we get a chance to go and do that. In fact, I leave this next Wednesday. I fly out to Florida for 3 days to go and help be a part of that group. And so I get a chance to connect with them. So if you ever have questions or anything like that, know that I'm always available just down the road as resources. And part of what that group does is build resources for churches that maybe don't have the ability to have a missions pastor, but they want to go on a trip. And so we write papers and how-to guides so that people can say, this is what I need to do with the trip. This is how I get there. These are the things. And so you can help in that capacity. We make these working white papers to where we can do that. And like I said, they're part of one of their slogans is connecting local passion with strategic global partnership. You guys do a lot in your community here. And how can you do the same thing in a global expression? See, at Cloverdale, Pastor Tom, if you've ever met that man, he knows how to love on some people at their point of need. And usually it's with some kind of treat or snack or something, and he'll come by and he'll give that to you. And that's his way of appreciating you, knowing that you're down and out. Maybe you're at the hospital. Maybe you've been going through something, but he wants to cheer you up and meet you at the point of need. That's another way that we can get involved with missions. When those people are out on the field, they don't have all the resources that we have of our local church. So lift them up in prayer, be able to help and encourage them. So however you do that locally, try to express that globally. Now, I told you about how to put that into action a little bit with the time, talent, and treasure, how to utilize the plate to the best of its ability. You guys have a lot of missions that you support as well. And I was talking with Pastor Brian a few weeks back about some of those. Like I mentioned, you have the Armstrongs, which are the regional coordinators for Southeast Asia and the Pacific. They oversee over 20 countries and working with the leaders in those countries to help place, build projects, and do those things. You also have the Oldhams that are the pastors to the Middle East, and they're stationed in Egypt. And they were here a little over a year ago. We had a dessert downstairs in the fellowship hall, and Ken was here to help share with you guys. So that is another one. You guys have an opportunity to get involved with the Torgesons. They're the regional coordinators for Latin America, and I don't know if this has been official yet, but when I was talking with Brian, he was hoping to have a trip, a short-term mission for next fall, for you guys to be able to go and impact in Costa Rica where they're at. And so that would be maybe another on-ramp for you guys to go and see that. See, oftentimes when you go on the trip, like I said, it just is an opportunity where you see a cure, but when you come home is usually when that takes place. So you see the need when you're abroad, but you usually come home and you address that and find a way to address that here. So that's another way. You have Cassie Wallace, that's part of the Wycliffe Bible translation in Nepal. And then another one that we didn't talk about, but I know I've talked about with Lee and Edie. They have a part that they're a part of. It's called Perspectives. Kind of like I was telling you with this, but it's a little different. But Perspectives gives you an opportunity to know how to engage. Because some people take the way of saying, look, mission sounds great, but Pastor Tom, he's like, I don't like camping. Like, I don't want to go out there. That doesn't seem like really easy for me to go. I'm a bigger man. It's just not easy for me to go and do these things. But Perspectives teaches you a way how you can get involved, because not all of us are sent to go. Some of us are prayer warriors, so you can be praying for them. Some of us help financially. Some guys I've talked to said, TJ, I can't even pick up a hammer to break a plate properly. I mean, you could send me over, I could spend 3 months doing a 1-week task and it'd still fall down. But I can write a check to cover somebody and help bless them. So there's a lot of opportunities to get involved and to help with your part of what missions can be. So if you have more questions, I would encourage you to also talk about that with Lee and Edie here locally in your congregation. I know that I went to Mission Aviation Fellowship for one day with Lee and got to hear some of that. So I know that that's available to you guys. Well, this time I'm going to have the worship team come back up, and we're going to sing a song, and then I'll come back up and pray to close us. But during this time, if you have a need, if you want prayer, I would love to do that. And then I'll make myself available after the service if you have more questions or you want to learn a little bit more about missions. Hopefully you saw today that this is a bit of a passion of mine that I really enjoy and that I felt God has called us to. And so let me know if that's the way that I can help and be a resource to you guys. The last thing is we go into this song. It's called Oceans. You're probably familiar with it. But it talks about, Spirit, lead me where my trust and my faith is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you may call me, right? And keep my eyes above the waves. Stay focused on who Christ is. Stay focused on that verse of Matthew, the Great Commission. It's a command. It's what God has called us to do, and we all have a part that we can play in a global scale, even here at home. So I want you to go ahead and listen and reflect on that as we have this time. Today, as you leave here and as I close in prayer, hopefully you've had an opportunity to see perspective, that you get a chance to step out in faith, be called into action. Thank you so much for what you are doing. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of coming this morning to be able to share with you. Thank you to Pastor Brian and the opportunity to come and share a bit of my passion, a bit of my testimony with you. Thank you for being a church that also helps address and is allowing him time to recharge his batteries. And I pray that God would continue to be with you as you move into a new season here at Oregon Trail Church of God. Will you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you that you call us, you command us to step out. Maybe that's just living out your word and a coworker sees it and we can share, it's not me, but it's the God that I serve that makes the difference. God, help us to be a people that is compassionate as you are, to love one another, that we would not be shards of glass that would go against each other, but we would be made whole through your Son, Jesus Christ, for eternity, that we could be a plate or a vessel that you can use to reach the highways and byways all around the surrounding areas of this church. God, thank you for these people. Thank you for their hearts. Thank you for the missions that they represent. I pray that you would allow them to feel loved, that the people that they support would know Oregon Trail by name, that they know that this church lifts them up daily in prayer, that is with them, that they have a ministry through Oregon Trail Church of God. God, thank you for your faithfulness. We ask all of these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Amen. Thank you for being here this morning. God bless you.